Hi everyone, welcome to another knitting video. I am so incredibly excited to present my latest pattern, the "'Tis the Damn Season" sweater, which I'm wearing right now. Ta-da! It's inspired by the "'Tis the Damn Season" song from one of my favorite Taylor Swift albums, Everymore. It features a colorwork design with the text and then some pine trees, stars, snowflakes, just in general winter-themed images. It's worked in the round, top down, and has a, in my opinion, very pretty twist on your standard rib for the collar, the hem and the cuffs. The original design actually had a basic 2x2 rib, but I changed it to a 2x2 cable rib and I think it looks really nice. Now the pattern is already available on basically anywhere I sell my patterns, so Ravelry, Etsy, Ko-fi, and here on YouTube in the shop section underneath the video. I will put all the links in the description, so if you are interested you can get it there. Today I'm sharing the process of making this one that I'm wearing right now, and we need to start with the yarn. Now for this whole pattern I'm using one strand of an alpaca yarn and one strand of a silk mohair held together. For the main color I'm using Drops Alpaca in 9036 wheat with Drops Kid Silk in 56 marzipan. And then for the green contrast color I'm using Drops Alpaca 9032 dark ivy held together with Drops Kid Silk in 19 dark green. I really love this color combination and I feel like it works really well for this particular design. Now speaking of the design, I think I've said everything I wanted to say. So let's go back in time a little bit and start knitting this sweater. As with any project, the first step is obviously the cast on. So I got the bigger needles, I made a slip knot and I started with the alternate cable cast on. Step 1 is to put the right needle behind the slip knot and make a knit stitch. The stitch is then slipped back to the left needle. And then step 2 is to put the needle purlwise between the two stitches and create a purl stitch. And then again, the stitch is slipped back to the left needle and now we have a total of 3 stitches. So I repeated this until I had the required amount of stitches and was ready to actually start knitting. Once all stitches were cast on, I joined in a round, placed the beginning of round marker and worked the third round, which is kind of a setup round. So the first round is just a simple 2x2 rib, and this one is still worked on the larger needles. And then after the first round, I switched to the smaller needles and began the actual cable portion of the 2x2 cable rib. So every other knit column will have a cable every 5th round. It sounds a little bit confusing, but it makes sense if you actually see the chart, which will be in the pattern, but that's what it boils down to. And now the first cable is at the second knit column from the beginning of the round. So that's after 4 stitches, so 2 knit, 2 purl, and then we do the cable. And then this cable, and all cables really, is a 1-1 left cable. So I reach my needle behind the stitches and put it in the second stitch. Then I make sure to hold on to the first stitch and pull both stitches from the needle. The first stitch is then picked up first and the second stitch second. And the 2 stitches have now switched positions and then both stitches are worked through the back loop. I just prefer doing this instead of using a cable needle, especially with these small cables. I just find that it's much easier and quicker to just use this method. And you don't have to knit through the back loop. It's just a preference thing. I just really like working cable knit stitches in the back loop. Then I worked the entire collar this way until I reached the given measurement. Then here you can see the finished collar. Personally, I really like how the cable rib looks. Then I switched back again to the larger needles and I continued in just plain stockinette, starting with an increase round and then just working, like I said, plain stockinette for a few centimeters before working another increase round. After which I worked stockinette again for a few more rounds. Now it's time for my favorite part, the color work. And I know myself, I knit tighter in color work, so I switched to even bigger needles than the one we started with. And in this case, that's the 3.5mm. And then I got started on the color work. I joined the contrast color and I worked the first yard, making sure to catch all the floats. For me, that's usually every third, fourth, fifth stitch. Really never going further than 5 stitches. And I was just really trying to manage the tension so that it wouldn't become too tight. And here the very first yard is done. So then I continued working all the charts and working some increase rounds along the way until all of it was done. And here we have the finished color work. I know it's my own design, but I really like it. I then continued in only the main color, so I cut the contrast color and put that aside, didn't need it anymore. I just kept going in the main color, and then after a few more rounds it was time to divide the body and the sleeves. So to divide everything I just worked the first half of the back piece. Then I got some of my scrap yarn and placed the stitches for the sleeves on the scrap yarn. Then I cast on stitches for the underarm, worked the entire front, and then again put the sleeve stitches on scrap yarn, created underarm stitches and just finished around with the second half of the back. And now we have divided for the body and the sleeves. Then continuing with the body, I worked just plain stockinette until it was time for the first increase round. This time, for the increase rounds, I used make one right and make one lefts. Previously I did all yarn overs, but for these kind of increase rounds, I like using these kind of increases, if that makes sense. So I worked until there was one stitch left before the first underarm marker. Then I made one right. So I picked up the bar between the stitches from the back to the front and then knit for the front loop. Then I worked one more stitch, slipped the marker and worked another stitch. And then it was time for a make one left. So this time I picked up the bar from the front and knit for the back loop. And then I repeated for the other underarm marker. And that way we have 4 stitches increased. I then repeated a series of alternating regular stockinette rounds and increase rounds until I reached the right length. And then I do recommend just trying it on really quickly to see if it's right for you or if you need to make it longer. For me this is right because I wrote the pattern, so I continued to the next step, which was the hem. And the hem I just worked the same as I worked the collar, so the 2x2 cable rib. And then finally it was time to cast off. You can use any stretchy bind off you like. I went with the Italian bind off because I personally really like how that looks. Now for a 2x2 it's a little bit more complicated than a 1x1 if you don't work around in which you rearrange stitches, which I didn't. So I will link a great tutorial in the description below because I also need to follow along with the tutorial while I'm doing this, so I'm probably not the right person to explain this entire bind off method. But you can check that out if you're interested. I I just really like how it looks. Anyway, I spent quite a lot of time binding off. This bind off takes so much longer than a regular one, but I do think it's worth it. And here we have the finished hem. I had also at this point picked up the sleeve stitches and was ready to start working on those. So after I picked up all the stitches, I just got to work doing yet another series of stockinette rounds, followed by this time decrease round. Then once the sleeve was long enough, I changed to my smaller needles and worked the same 2x2 cable rib as I did for the collar and the hem. So it's all one cohesive thing. That's a better word, but I can't think of it right now. Anyway, after finishing the ribbon, I worked the Italian bind off again, and with that the sleeve was done. Then obviously I worked the second sleeve the same way and the whole sweater was finished. I also blocked the sweater, by the way. I really recommend blocking it because of the color work. It just makes it look much more smoother and kind of evens the stitches out. And I feel like it also helps to make the cable ribbing really stand out and look really nice and neat. So I highly recommend blocking it. Now that it's done, let's have a closer look at the finished sweater. And there we have it. I really love how this turned out, and yeah, the colors work really well together. I think the color works looks really nice, and like I said in the intro, the 2x2 cable rib was kind of a last minute decision. The original design had a simple 1x1, but I wanted something different, and I'm really happy I made that decision because it looks so nice. And yeah, now I'm very tempted to use it in all of my future projects. I've actually been wearing this a lot already, and I know I'll wear it even more in the next couple of months. It's just very comfortable and I love how it looks, so very happy with this. Again, the links to the different places you can find this pattern are all in the description. For now, I think I'm just going to end this here. Yeah, I've said everything I wanted to say. Thank you for watching. Feel free to subscribe. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. And here on YouTube in the shop section below, I find it just a little more. I just really liked working. I just really like.